Have you ever encountered this individual who seemed to have an answer for everything and is confidently assertive as if his opinions are irrefutable facts and cannot be wrong? Have you ever wondered if your own behavior and actions are as smart as you think they are? And did you ever notice that sometimes you tend to ignore, deny, or distort the truth just to make a point or win an argument? Great philosophers like Plato, Carlo, Cipolla, and Dietrich Bonhoeffer agreed that stupidity is not necessarily a lack of intelligence, but rather the misuse of one's intelligence due to the lack of self-awareness. But how does stupidity develops, and why human beings behave or act stupid? Almost all stupid behaviors, causing damage to the individual and to others, are the result of lack of self-awareness. Think about that. We all know someone who, out of pride or fear, destroys what they don't understand, even when it costs them to.
The colleague who sabotages a team project just to prove a point. The leader who divides their own people to feel powerful. The citizen who tears down their neighbor out of resentment. Without self-observation, we can't see our biases, emotions, or contradictions. You see, stupidity thrives in people who never question their own thoughts, who react automatically rather than reflect consciously. Thinking deeply takes energy. The brain prefers shortcuts, quick answers that feel right. This cognitive laziness leads people to stop questioning, stop analyzing, and rely on surface impressions.
And logic becomes secondary to feelings like fear, anger, and pride. We start justifying what feels right instead of what is true.
Other forms of mental laziness is overestimating our abilities and lacking the passion and curiosity to learn and improve, assuming current knowledge is sufficient, which translates to inability to learn from previous mistakes. Stupidity grows in the mind when it stops thinking for itself and starts to yield to social, financial, or political pressure. History shows that this kind of behavior doesn't just harm individuals, it can corrupt entire societies. It begins innocently enough, as a wish to belong, to be safe, to avoid conflict. But the moment we allow that comfort to replace our conscience, the descent begins. Or as Carl Jung sarcastically said, thinking is difficult, that's why most people judge.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer divided moral paralysis into 3 stages. First comes distraction, which, for the modern mind of today's world, became sort of the norm. We scroll, react, and move on. And in this endless noise, we lose the habit of asking simple questions. Why do I believe this? Why am I doing this? What does it mean? The absence of these questions is where stupidity quietly begins. And soon enough, we start drifting into comfort and conformity, simply because it feels better and safer to agree with others. While the independent thought feels threatening, the opinions of the crowd offer a sense of safety. So we start adopting collective language and secondhand convictions. We stop thinking with others and start thinking like others. This moment, when a person's voice begins to dissolve into the collective echo, when right and wrong start to depend not on conscience, but on consensus, is where the final stage of moral paralysis becomes complete. And we start to deceive ourselves and justify our choices. We start to rationalize our silence, to build stories that protect our comfort. We tell ourselves that we had no choice, that everyone else would have done the same, that the situation was too complex to resist. These small lies accumulate until they form a wall between us and reality. What began as distraction ends as self-deception. At this point, stupidity is no longer ignorance, it's a refusal to confront truth. Bonhoeffer believed there was hope. He said, "Only an act of liberation, not instruction, can overcome stupidity. Education alone isn't enough because you can fill a head with facts and still leave the soul asleep. What's needed is awakening, a renewal of conscience, of empathy, of courage. He further explained that the only true defense against stupidity is spiritual freedom, the freedom to think, to question, to act with responsibility. That freedom, he believed, is where wisdom begins. True thinking isn't about solving problems or collecting facts. It's about staying awake. It's the quiet dialogue we have with ourselves when no one is watching. It's the moment we start asking, should I, before can I? Thinking is conscience in motion, and the refusal to think is the first betrayal of it. To think honestly is to face discomfort, contradiction, and doubt, but it is also the beginning of moral freedom. To will is to decide, to choose, to act, even when it costs something. The will bridges the gap between thought and action. Without it, we become dreamers who never move, philosophers in name, but not in life. Each small choice to act with integrity strengthens this inner muscle. Freedom isn't the absence of constraint, it's the ability to choose what is right, even when it's difficult. When we lose the will to decide for ourselves, stupidity takes on its most dangerous form: passivity, dressed as innocence. Judgment is the ability to see clearly and discern what is right amid the mess of the world. Judgment is the outer expression of an inner life. It's how thought translates into moral presence. To judge well doesn't mean to condemn others. It means to perceive reality without distortion, to stand firm in what one sees, even when the majority looks away. Judgment allows us to resist the collective illusion that everything is fine when it isn't. It's how societies preserve their sanity, through individuals who are willing to say, no, this is wrong. What ties all of this together is the realization that stupidity is not about a lack of education or intelligence. Many of the most dangerous forms of stupidity have come from clever minds that stopped questioning themselves. It's a spiritual and moral condition, not an intellectual one. It's the moment the mind gives up its independence in exchange for comfort, when thinking turns into repetition, and conscience into convenience. To overcome this, we must cultivate the courage to be alone with our own thoughts. In solitude, the mind becomes honest. It's where the noise fades and the inner dialogue begins again. In that silence, we rediscover the simplest of truths, that being human means taking responsibility for one's own mind,